Around this time last year, I reviewed The Street 10, a miserable exercise in repetition where the goal was to suss out a bunch of anomalies and either walk forwards or backwards. As it turns out, there are actually a number of games in this weird genre, including a brand new Switch release called The Exit Project, Backstreets. This game takes you from the street to the back street, which is really more like an alleyway with doors on each end. It's atmospheric and occasionally creepy, but is this new release from Nostra Games any fun? I mean, is it at least better than The Street 10? Well, that's what we're about to find out when I review The Exit Project, Backstreets. If you're thinking about buying the Exit Project Backstreets for the story, then don't bother, because there isn't one. All you know is that you're playing a man who's trying to get back to his apartment, but he's stuck in what seems to be some kind of weird loop. You see, every time he opens the door to what should be his home, he's warped right back to the beginning of that alleyway, seeing the same junk strewn about and hearing the same radio broadcast. What the hell's going on? But just like The Street 10, the goal of this game is to puzzle your way through 10 levels in order to finally make it home safe and sound. Now, I will admit that I'm using the word puzzle extremely loosely here, because what you're really trying to do is just figure out if the alleyway is normal or if it has some sort of weird anomaly. Here's how it works in a practical sense. If you enter a back street and you see the number 666 spray painted everywhere, well, that's an example of an anomaly, and you're going to need to walk back through the back door. The same goes when you see crows flying around, boxes getting blown off of shelves, the lights flickering on and off, or even a freaking mannequin dancing above the street. Sometimes the anomalies are audio cues, such as the radio screaming at you, or a spooky knocking coming from the other side of the door. If you witness any of these strange incidents happening, then it's time to turn around and go back through the door that you just walked through. Now, on the flip side, if everything is as it should be in the level, then what you're going to do is you're going to walk through the door at the end of the street, advancing our hero to the next, seemingly identical alleyway. You're just gonna keep going through that door until you detect an anomaly. But watch out, because if you go through the wrong door, then you're gonna get warped right back to the beginning of the game. You can keep track of which stage you're on by looking at the number painted on the gate at the start of each cycle, though the character will be audibly annoyed every time you make the wrong choice. If all this sounds incredibly easy, well, it's because it is. Once you crack its front door, back door code, you'll have no problem beating the game in just a matter of minutes. It took me less than 10, and that included me solving the so-called puzzle. While there are certainly a few subtle anomalies that can mess you up, most are in-your-face obvious. All you need to do is memorize that base level and be a little observant, and you'll have no problem beating the game in record time. Now look, I suppose you could argue that at least the short alleyway looks good. It's dark, moody, and certainly looks lived in, detailed to within an inch of its life. There really is a lot to look at and potentially memorize. But there is really no reason to gawk at the detailed junk because the anomalies aren't very subtle. You're never asked to count the lights or make sure there are the same amount of boxes in each cycle, because most of the anomalies are just obvious to a fault. Who is this game for? That's the question I kept asking myself as I looped my way through the alleyway. Sure, it's moody, but it's not scary, so it doesn't work as a horror game. There's no story, so you wouldn't buy it for the plot. The puzzle is obvious, so nobody's gonna play it as a brain teaser. And did I mention that it's not challenging and there's barely anything to the gameplay? I just don't get it. Who the heck is this game for? And more importantly, what are they getting out of this experience? If you were to tell me that this came from a first-time developer who was using the project to practice how to construct a claustrophobic and atmospheric stage, well, then at least this game would make sense. But no, the Exit Project is actually one of 13 titles Nostra Games has released so far this year. Keep in mind that we're only 8 weeks into the year, so they've definitely been busy putting out quality titles like Street Food Restaurant Owner and my favorite, Save the Doge. Look, the real problem with this game isn't that it's not fun, but rather that it's just not much of anything. It barely has a start and it ends just as abruptly, offering little in the way of satisfaction. It's repetitive, it's boring, and it never adds up to anything. And worst of all is the $10 asking price, which is especially offensive when you consider that it won't even take you 10 minutes to beat the game. I don't know, maybe you could justify that price for an easy platinum trophy on PlayStation. But the Switch version doesn't even have that excuse to fall back on. Mark my words, the exit project Backstreets will be the most forgettable game of 2025. The exit project Backstreets is an extremely simple game where the goal is to walk through either the front door or the back depending on a bunch of anomalies. If that doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun, then you're right, it's not. This is a boring, repetitive, and ultimately pointless game that comes across as the type of thing that would be made by AI. And no, the game doesn't even get points for its atmospheric tone or detailed alleyway. I honestly can't think of a single reason to spend $10 on this clunker, especially when there are far better games at a fraction of that price. Just no. No, 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 no. Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. Who is this game for? I'm serious. Who? I don't get it. I mean, I may not like every genre, but I can at least understand who the target audience is. I'm at a loss when it comes to this one, folks. Let me see your thoughts in the comments below. In other news, we're going to be back later this week with magazine on magazine violence. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,